Okay. Welcome to the Bucky call for the weekend of September 21st, 22nd. We're in Amy Edmondson's book, A Fuller Explanation, and we're starting on page 14. Universe. Not the universe, because there's only one. Universe. Cool. And how are you feeling tonight? And what are you anticipating for this evening?
Yeah. Actually, I'm feeling prepared. Okay. Um, Sometimes when you disappear for one most of the meeting, you get quite lost. You can get quite lost. So I'm prepared this week. So I went through. I managed to catch up on the reading, and my God, I've got them all highlighted. Literally, the entire pages of it highlighted. So one of the things that really resonated is because this is something that we've been making sure is happening in our school. It started off with my, the science part of it. My sister is an engineer, so she created the curriculum for our math and the sciences, so anyway, when we did this chem caper, the chemistry role playing game, we realized that or rather I realized that, and to be able to put it forth, is that all the sciences and the math, they don't exist on their own separately. And yet we insist on teaching them all separately by separate individuals who do not know the rest of the subjects. Okay, so we realize that, for our sciences, we in our school, we hire engineers and biomedical degree holders and psychologists and even medical doctors, architects to teach the math and the sciences. Okay, and many of them, that they get quite disenchanted with the industry, and so they want to work with children and to make the change in education, right? So we have been making sure that in the school, when we do the teaching, it's by people who know more than one subject, right? 2, 3, 4 is best, but to get that for every teacher, not so easy. But at least what we have are all the science people who are more science centric, science and math centric. And when they teach, they're able to connect. So physics and chemistry has got what's that now? Electromagnetism, right? So and therefore electrolysis. Electrolysis appears both in physics and chemistry. But then, when they're taught according to the books, they're all separated. And the other thing, when we were doing the chemistry game, I got my sister and asked her, and I got my sister to answer this, because she drew the she mapped out the entire curriculum for secondary school. And I asked her, wow, I looked at the whole thing. I said, this is crazy. Now I can see what things are linked to what. And I said, can we find this map? This map for the whole entire chemistry curriculum? She thought about it. No. And then I have a chemical engineer in my team as well. He's the principal of one of my schools. And I asked him, I said, you did chemical engineering, so do you get this big picture thing as well? He said, no. The further we go up, the more specialized and inward looking and tinier they focus on in terms of specialization. That really blew our minds, because we were talking and nobody has ever talked about this. The other thing Melinda, my sister, pointed out was this. For chemistry, every subject is related to every other subject. Every topic, sorry. Every topic in chemistry is related to every other topic and every topic. So you imagine our relationship thingy, right? The relationship, like if you have one and then if you have three, then it exponentially grows. That is chemistry. So if you're learning something in year 7, for instance, or grade 7, then this chapter 1 is related to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? And 2 is related to pum, 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 pum. And then when you go to year 8, this chapter 1 in year 7 is linked to every chapter, every topic in year 8. And likewise, it just goes like that. You just imagine when you get to year 10 and year 11, it's astronomical in terms of the information that needs to crossover like this. And it's no wonder our kids cannot answer questions in year 11, or they struggle and they feel like they're idiots like me, okay, not knowing science, because your to answer a question, it could come from it could start off with something you learned in year 7 and it's linked to year 10, and then you've got to answer it to something in year 9. Nobody teaches that way. Nobody is even aware that's how the thinking process needs to work. Then we also know that all the subjects are interrelated. They don't exist on their own. And nobody has created an education system for the sciences like this. And worse, are the teachers who are trained to do this. In Asia, you will find schools, and the chairperson of our national STEM movement, you try to do STEM in schools. She told me, she said, you know what? The schools won't do it. You bring STEM activities in, you want to help them and train them to teach it in the schools. The physics teacher will say, nope, I can't do this. There's chemistry and biology in there. I can't do it. I don't have the information, right? And then, or it's year 7, secondary school, right? The lower sec, upper sec. The teacher will say, I only know the lower sec content. This one has got upper sec content. I don't know. Okay. And the upper sec don't know what, they generally don't touch lower sec, right? It's the foundation part. And you just imagine it's across, not just in our country, my country, it's in other Asian countries. Because I heard the same comment from the principal of a progressive school in Hong Kong. And she said, yeah, we can't do this either because our teachers say that there is physics there and they don't know physics. So and it is no wonder that it's so hard to hire people who can think and join the dots and can see a bigger picture, because they've all been siloed out. Within a subject, it's siloed by chapter and topics, and then it's siloed by subjects, right? Per subject is siloed. And now we wonder why our kids cannot handle, these subjects well. And therefore you have like maybe 20% who will go into science stream, and out of that science stream, to take it on, and then to take it on in university, STEM courses and degrees, it drops further, because most of these science stream students, which is about 20%, they will drop science and they'll go into finance, and they'll go into business, and they'll go into the more artistic courses. I've got students I know with straight A's with sciences, doing music composing, and some are in one academy, another one of these creative universities, colleges, and there they are working on what they love doing. Yeah, but it requires math there too, So anyway, I'm just sharing what I got out of missing last week's what do you call our meeting, and reading just that one statement. Nature has only one department, one comprehensive coordinating system, and now I have the science and someone from science, well-known person, to back it up, because we are saying it, right? But it's a bunch of teachers in Malaysia saying it. So yeah, thank you very much. It was most exciting. Joe, how do you feel, and what do you expect to take away today?
I feel very good. It's great to be here. It's my expectation for today is, kind of to let things emerge. And covering something like universe. I was having a discussion just recently about this last night, in the sense that how to come up with dealing with contradictions in an effective way. It was very good discussion, and you could see Bucky's ideas at work. right? So as far as whole systems thinking. So you know, it was really, really exciting. You know, just as a side note, I was able to attend actually a session or a lecture, I should say, by Amy Edmondson yesterday. And you know, it was really exciting in the sense that it was about performance management, a lot of the discussions, you know, surrounded that topic in particular. And performance management requires someone to actually look at the whole. You know, it's having this connection between not just you know, kind of something like financial performance, but being able to um, understand what is meaningful, what you're trying to accomplish, and um, aligning your goals, meaning in this particular instance, the employee's goals, with those values. But you know, that's holistic thinking. That's not only thinking about, say, the bottom line or something along those, you know, or very, very looking at things in a linear way. So, you know, performance management is really, I would say, is related to um, Bucky's concepts and how you're trying to make the world work, uh, you know, for all of humanity. And so, not necessarily just uh, work for yourselves. And I think that that's something that's more mission driven um, than it is driven just by um, your own personal desires. So you know, I really very much appreciated the session. Wish it had gone a little longer, but you know, I mean that there were a lot of busy people that were on the call, and so but yeah, so it was, you know, it's been a good couple days. I really enjoyed myself the past couple days. So Richard, how are you feeling? What would you like to take away from today?
Well, I'm feeling pretty good, and come off a morning discussion with the World Weaver group. So we saw at least two of that group, not a big group, but two of that group engaged in um, direct sort of experiences with nature out in the countryside. But Anne's comments triggered two things for me, or three things, I guess. But one is the whole issue of silos and separation, and I got to connect with some of the work of of Lynn Margulis, who is a microbiologist um, of some renown, and at one point married to Carl Sagan, the cosmologist. But she and her son wrote a book called Slanted Truths. And in that book, she coined the term academic apartheid to try and punch home the realities that Anne was just describing. But the other thing that came to my mind was what she was saying is that I started teaching chaos theory in my social work courses, and I wasn't being very well received by the students because it was a strange sort of subject matter to be introduced to that type of student. But one of the students was a good friend of another student who was studying architecture. And when they were having a beer one night, they were both talking about their crazy professors. and and that these professors were talking about something called chaos theory. And so the architect student took this information back to his professor, and thankfully that professor said, "Oh, I'm going to form a study group of people on the whole campus that might be interested in this topic." And so we ended up with a biomedical engineer, a mathematician, chemistry people, social work people, etc. And at one point, somebody stopped us in one of our discussions and said, "Can you think of any other topic on campus in the university that could draw this kind of diversity of people into a common dialogue and discussion?" And everybody basically said no. Then one of the more exciting things, which again I think kind of relates to Anne and what she was talking about, is that the math teacher, professor, he also kind of chided most of us of saying, you know, if you don't really know calculus, you don't really understand chaos theory. Well, that kind of scared everybody because most of us didn't know calculus, but then he kind of had a smile on his face and said, but that shouldn't stop us in terms of this kind of dialogue that we're into. Then one other day, he again chose to sort of talk freely and openly, and he said, you know, some days I sit in my mathematics office and wonder, what the hell am I doing? You know, why am I the teacher of math in this university? So he said, I do something that most of you probably don't do, is that I get the university calendar that tells you all the courses that every faculty is offering, and I flip through it like reading the dictionary. And he said, so I go to one department and another department, I read something about their work, and then he finally he said he got to my department, not that he was speaking about to me personally, but he just said, sometimes I get to this social work department and I read through the courses and the things that they are talking about, and it sort of says to me, wow, that would be interesting. I would love to study some of those topic areas. And what that did for me, because very often the soft science people think that they are at the bottom of the totem pole. And it raised me into a sense of equality that said, I don't have to feel less than. Here's a man who I would revere in his department, is actually reading a calendar and stopping at my department and saying, gee, I would love to learn something about whatever those guys are teaching. So, and I think that's the kind of thing that Anne's getting at, is that if all of those teachers could eventually get something in common like that and realize that, oh my gosh, I need to be connected to the other person and the other teacher, and I need to know a little bit more than just my narrow subject specialty. And I think what it will do is maybe similar to what it did to me, is that once you see all this interconnection, you really feel welcomed, you feel part of the group, you feel equal. And so one last thing, because when you're talking about chemistry being interconnected to everything, when we get to the section in this chapter that talks about return to modelability, that's all about chemistry and the work of Van Hoff way back when, I think the 1800s, who used modeling, the tetrahedron modeling, to better understand chemistry. And he, in fact, was the first chemist to, well, he was the first recipient of the Nobel Prize in Chemistry.
Mm.
And it was because he was a model maker, not just a mathematics sort of understanding of something like chemistry. So it really was a wonderful connection to hear Anne say that chemistry is interconnected with everything. And when you think of the tetrahedron model, even though it's in a minimum sort of complexity, it demonstrates that everything in that model is connected to every other corner in the model. And so it actually represents exactly what you were saying about chemistry being interconnected. And once we see that, then we can also see that, oh, that's probably going on in biology too, or that's going on in math, and that's going on in engineering. So I expect to get more of that as we read our few pages today. So thank you for that, Anne, and thank you, Joe. And really quite excited to hear that you were in on a session with Amy. And it also brings back my session with Amy in 1995 when we were at the 100th anniversary for Fuller's birthday. And she was teaching an adult kindergarten class, had us all playing with gumballs and toothpicks and making different geometric, and all the adults were quite reticent because that felt like they were being invited to do something that only little kids do in kindergarten. But then as she engaged with the audience, then everybody sort of, they did what Fuller, I guess, said, you know, they stripped off their sort of adult sort of costumes and decided to let the kid in them come out again.
Yeah.
And had a really enjoyable day. So thank you on that, Joe. That was just, it's almost vicariously feeling that you were back in a session with Amy doing the presenting. So over to you, Steve. How are you feeling, and what's your expectations for today?
Well, unfortunately, as I've been sitting here, I've gotten more and more fatigued. I'm real excited about, and that's in spite of all the exciting things I've heard and how much I've been gleaning out of these calls. But I just don't think I'm kind of got a cold sweat going on, and I'm very distracted. And I would love to see that map. It's probably very proprietary. I don't know if you could. I would like to see how you've mapped everything out and how that works in those different spheres of relationships. You know, is it a spiral? Is it a Venn chart? You know, what is it?
It was a mind map. But the thing is, we drew it on the board. So I don't know if Melinda kept it, you know, but I can ask. If not, I'll get to recreate. So, and that was like years ago, like, what was it, 2014, 2013, thereabouts, when we started doing the game. And, you know, it was created in Malaysia, and we found that our market was in the US, and we didn't have the, you know, the capacity to market it there. So it kind of, we got awards for them, you know, for that game, but we just didn't make it wasn't a commercial success. But we have no issues with, you know, if someone wants to take it on, and we're hoping today's world, there are people more open to something like this. And the issue is that they all want to have chemistry lessons before they buy a chemistry game, you know. So it was like, wow. And here we are doing it. 6-7-year-olds can play it, you know, and so on. So either we have to rename it or something. Anyway, but I'll see what I can do about the you know, the mind map. Yeah.
Because I've gotten resolved in the last week. I went to a gig on Tuesday night, and there was a bass player there, and I was there early, and he was there early. He started talking, and we got into UFOs, and I said, well, and I heard Elon Musk just today. I was listening to a podcast. Elon Musk says, I'm a biological puppet, you know. I'm running this machine. And that's my whole premise, is that the aliens found this beautiful planet and they had all these readings. They thought, man, this is so cool. What if we could have this experience? So they built biological spacesuits. And that's how they got to enjoy the planet. And the punchline is, we forgot that we're the aliens. And in my book, I want to have a premise, but I also want to have it charted out with a flow. So there's not just words like in a recipe. It's nice to know, if you're building a cake, how the eggs affect this part of the thing and that part of the thing. If the eggs aren't there, you're going to miss a couple things in that cake remedy. And I think that's what I like to do in my book, is say, you're looking at this because there are several outcomes here depending on the application. And then when we look at this, it's part of that, but it also extends down here. I don't know. I just want to graphically show everybody where they are with a particular concept, because like chemistry, I think most people don't understand what the elements of mindfulness or consciousness or sovereignty. They don't understand those concepts. They got nothing to compare them to. So I'd love to see your map if you think of it. I'm building some charts.
But are you okay to sit through today's meeting then?
I don't think so. I'm broken into a cold sweat, and I think that I'm very distracted. And as much as I would hate missing this, why do you ask?
No, I'm just asking because if you need to, yeah, by all means, yeah.
Yeah,
We
I
won't
think
miss
Yeah,
you, but
seriously. No, I mean,
yeah.
no need to push through.
and I saw your charts down here. Should we
Yeah,
talk
one,
about
yeah,
chart,
one was
Joe?
just, yeah, one was actually from Stuart Firestein, and he talks about how there's this element of specialization and how we actually know more and more about,
Which one do you want to look at first? You want to look at the top one first or the second one first?
Well, I like this.
Yeah, the second one's just a joke, actually. It's just but it is pretty interesting. It's from a site called XKCD.
Okay, so you want to look at this red line chart first, or the joke over here?
Sure, yeah.
The red line chart?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Here we go.
That's small. Yeah, I mean, and he just talks about how, in the sense that we come in, and we're undergraduates, and we actually are kind of, have a idea about everything, but we're not necessarily all that specialized yet. But as we become more specialized, as we go to our various fields, we know a lot about a very specific topic. And so when you know a lot about a very specific topic, you know a lot about less. In a way, we become so specialized. And he's critical in the sense that of how we approach education in general, that it's less about it's more about becoming more proficient at a particular subject.
Yeah, what I like about the chart, what I see here, is that if I'm an undergraduate, I know a lot. And as I get more and more educated, I know a lot more about less and less. And if you take the line all the way down where it crosses the x-axis here, I know a lot about nothing. And a PhD is just one step above a lot about nothing. Is that what it's saying?
Yeah, it's over specialization. It's a lot about one particular topic, and this is in line with Bucky's idea of children in general. How children like to explore, that they like to kind of, that their interest, their curiosity is kind of unbounded, and that school has a tendency to drown that out. We're not necessarily exploring education in the same way, meaning, applying our ideas in the world, that we talked about various levels of abstraction, the way school works. And what that does is really kind of limits our creativity, and actually what we're doing in breaking things, and actually mystique, and some of these other ideas that Bucky talks about. So from those, from that perspective, it really becomes, kind of, we become more proficient about something, but there's also the risk of tunnel vision.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that, where we were talking a moment ago about more whole systems thinking. So what actually Stuart Firestein's approach to essentially help students think about things outside of neuroscience, which is what he specialized in. He would bring in people from various departments and talk about their hypothesis, what would be the result if their hypothesis was wrong, and how they have actually arrived at it, so that they had actually various disciplines where they were engaging with experts, and then that the students could actually start to draw connections between various disciplines. And what the idea is that you're cultivating your ignorance. You're getting outside of what you actually normally learn, as opposed to just providing answers to what you already are learning. So this is like part of that graph, is that you start to provide answers. You're providing answers about a specific topic. So even if you think about it in terms of, I come in, I'm a graduate, undergraduate, you learn economics, very broad level, right? But then let's just say you get into something like trade, all right? And then I go into trade. Well, then maybe I go into trade within within NATO or something along those lines. Or when I look at trade within a specific set of countries. And then, I apply certain ideas and come up with a theory. And, essentially you're defending your thesis, but you're becoming very, very specific. Now, it's not to say that we ought not become practical, but at the same time, it is to be cognizant of the fact that we're looking at the world in a more from a more narrow perspective.
Right on.
And
Yeah.
so what are the other ways? What are the other things that, as Richard had actually stated in the opening, the idea of applying different ideas to chemistry that enabled, and I forget the gentleman's name, to win the Nobel Prize in Physics. But anyway, that's
Another way of looking at that is, again, through Fuller's eyes, but is looking at it from a military context. And Fuller said, why do what's the top rank in the military, in the army? And then, he would pause, I guess, but eventually somebody would answer, or he would answer for them. And it's a general. And it might even be, a 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, 5-star general. So generals are in charge of the army. And what do? They have a whole bunch of specialists at master's levels or PhD levels who they instruct and direct, and are in charge of. And so I always had fun with that, with teaching at the undergraduate level and teaching what we call generalist social work. And I said, you guys, most of you want to get out of the undergraduate program and go up the ladder, or in this case, go down the ladder, I guess, to become a master's. And then you start thinking, well, in order to really be at the top of my game, I have to have a PhD. But don't rush into that, because if you stay a generalist, at some point you're going to be in charge of organizations and agencies that tell the specialist what to do. And so be proud of being a generalist at the undergraduate level, and compare it to the military, and you realize that the top rank in the military is a generalist rank.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think this is really powerful in the terms of it took PhD scientists who specialized in atomic particles to create an atom bomb, but nobody created a way to turn it off.
Yeah.
They were so far down into the hole of atom bombs and never thought about, well, what's this going to do to everything? It was all about, I'm going to build an atom bomb and then a hydrogen bomb. What about the off switch? Where are the checks and balances? And Elon is really huge on this. You know, we got to have an off switch on the AI,
Right.
because we don't know what it's doing, but we got to turn it off. And so, but people are down there building the AI going, oh, this is really exciting. And they know a lot about almost nothing when it comes to things.
Yeah.
I've got something to add to this, yeah, because we were very aware of this, right? The higher people go, and well, you know, I'm so excited that I realized that our team, our group meeting, and everyone that comes to this our Bucky group, and the people we talk about, there is a term for them. That have you come across the term polymaths?
Yeah.
Good, great, because today's world, every one of us need to be polymaths in order to be contributors, effective contributors to our society, to people and the world. We need to be polymaths. And so what we are doing in the school, we're very deliberate about it, which is to nurture polymaths, all our students, not just those we think can become polymaths. So just to help out, Steve and Joe, are y'all familiar with the term polymath?
Sure. Yeah.
Good. Okay, perfect. So we need to get the kids to know many things with depth and to be very specialized into them, right? And not just a couple of things that they know they do well. We actually literally have to nurture as many depths as possible, and to know each of those depths with well. So that's another ball game altogether. And that includes also the what we call, you know, you said the soft science, yeah, Richard. So people call them soft skills. We call them power skills. Yeah, because that's the skill. Like you're right, the generalist. I love this. I'm so gonna share this with my team as well. The generalists are the ones who are going to lead, you know, and therefore the ones that are really effective leaders, they're polymaths. They know a lot, and and speakers, and you know, if you're at the top of your food chain, you know many things, but with depth. Particularly the ones that I mean, I'm not talking about the ones in the academic world. I'm talking about the ones out there. Yeah, making a difference to the world, and when they speak and everyone listens. And it started off when every time people talk about polymath, of course they talk about Leonardo da Vinci. Okay, and then of course today's world you have the likes of Elon Musk and a whole bunch of the others. Yeah. So, oh yes, the other thing is, Richard, could you put into our group chat the name of the lady who coined the term academic apartheid, and the other thing she talked about? Yeah.
Yeah.
And her book, what it's called.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And Joe, thank you for all these diagrams. My goodness. And you, the minute we talk about this,
yeah, this is like funny. This is one of my favorite, actually.
Yeah, it's just like you pull them out so quickly, just like Steve, you know.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Like you have it, but to find it so quickly.
Yeah,
I love this. I love this.
Yeah, this is one of my favorites. It's but there, you know, there's always some truth to humor. And so yeah, it's yeah, as far as sociologists and psychologists, and it's actually interesting how some of the when I was thinking about this when I saw this initially, even thinking about the first couple of them as far as sociology and psychology goes. One of and this is directly related to your field, is that there was a book called The Loss of Sadness. I think I have it. Yeah. And and it just is talking about how psychiatry is, transformed normal sorrow into a depressive disorder, I should say. But one of the interesting things with that is how sociologists and psychologists, they had said, are unable to really come up with a consistent explanation that allows them to kind of determine the difference between the circumstances the individual's in and what maybe actually whether or not they have a very serious depressive order. Now, that's an oversimplification, I understand, but they do critique that. But I'm thinking about it. You have sociologists and psychologists, and then you kind of come back in a way to the interrelatedness of how sociologists, psychologists, and you have psychiatry somewhere in there, and the idea of psychiatry and how that works in, and how these disciplines work if they're working in a siloed fashion, that it's it's problematic in the sense that you kind of don't see the whole, and so coming up with this a meta narrative that actually can help at least kind of make some distinctions a little bit more obvious. They feel like they haven't really been able to make those connections yet. And maybe AI will be able to spot those patterns. But it is interesting. But there's some truth to that humor. So.
I would say on this chart, we need to add just groups of humans over here. And a sociologist would just say, I'm looking at groups of humans. And then next to that would be a human being. And it seems the further we get down this line, the further we get from human beingness, evidenced by a mathematician over here saying, hey, mathematician can figure all this out, but it's the furthest thing from being a human being.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I would add a couple more stick figures on that chart.
Me too.
Richard seems to have disappeared. Are we complete on this topic?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Joe, I've sent you the book. You should already have it. It's in all of the invitations. You should be able to look in the calendar, the Google Calendar, and be able to pull that book down, but I sent it to you.
Okay.
Email. I sent it to both your emails, the Yahoo and the iCloud.
I have my own copy, actually, so.
Good. Just go to page.
Well, it's Universe where we were starting, right?
Yeah, we're on Universe on page 14, and I'm just going to dip out right here. Sorry to say, I have too many rumblings going on all through my body.
No, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to split. Joe, I'm making you the host, and we'll see you all next week for sure. If you're here.
Take care. Steve,
Right,
have a rest, yeah?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm going to make Joe the host.
Yeah, just really quickly, I don't know if either of you have actually read the book Range either.
No.
That's a very, very good book. and I will put that in the chat. And that is really gets to the heart of human development. And it talks about essentially how generalists are people that find their way later in life, essentially, and that they're exploring more, have more success than somebody that is very specialized. And I think that in a very it's the writing about AI in it is a little bit outdated, but the rest of the book is, I find, to be really, really appropriate for today's world, because I think that people do have to be generalists in order to be more marketable, effective, and actually just have a better understanding of the world.
I think it's also options and choices. They have more options, choices,
Sure.
and then the opportunities that open up at the top would be more. I think I love it so much.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. So I will go ahead and share.
Yeah, and we haven't even started the book.
Yeah. Okay. Oh. Okay, this is and I will have to mark the exact spot that we end up stopping up on, because of my pages will not align to what Steve has, because Steve has actually the PDF. So universe, the ultimate manifestation of, unless someone else would like to read. Richard, I know your camera's not working, or would you like to read, or Anne?
Well, go ahead. I'll come in after. Yeah.
Okay, we'll share the reading like we usually do.
Okay, I'll start then.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, universe. The ultimate manifestation of nature's coordinate system is universe. Fuller deliberately omits the article for the universe, implies the possible existence of more than one, just as we do not say the God, but simply God. Fuller capitalizes universe for the same reason. Universe is everything. It's all there is. Or, more poetically, universe is all that isn't me and me. But Fuller would never leave it at that. He is indefatigably thorough. Einstein revolutionized our understanding of universe, explains Fuller. Prior to his relativity theory, we could think in terms of a single frame, simultaneously complete picture, unimaginably vast, but still simultaneous at any given moment. This understanding must now be replaced by a scenario concept. Universe 301.10. Universe is the aggregate of all humanities consciously apprehended and communicated non-simultaneous and only partially overlapping experiences.
That's a lot. Yeah, that's shall we stop there, or would you like to, why don't we keep going until the end of
Yeah, okay. He willingly dissects his own long-winded definition. To Fuller, aggregate implies a complex that cannot be comprehended in totality at only one moment. Consciousness means awareness of otherness. To be apprehended, information must first be within the range of a human perception and then actually be noticed. Communicated means informing self or others. Non-simultaneous means not occurring at the same time. That's 302.00. Events of universe 011/012 are instead partially overlapping, like generations. My lifetime overlaps my grandmother's, and hers overlaps the life of her grandmother. But I was born long, long after the death of both my great and great grandmothers. Such are the events of universe. Every experience overlaps some, but not all other experiences. You want to pause there?
Sure. Are there any comments or what
Right.
anybody?
Well, I think this is really a very important kind of understanding to go from the notion of simultaneous to scenario, partially overlapping, partially simultaneous, and I know one of the examples he uses, well, he's doing it in the next paragraph or so, but this whole idea of when we see a starlight, that star, the light that we are seeing may in fact be hundreds of years old, and the star itself may no longer exist, even though we're seeing it right now. And I think that's what how he conceptualized this idea of a scenario as opposed to kind of a fixed simultaneousness of it. And again, what you just read about the overlapping with a past generation really captures the ripple sort of rings of one's own history, and how we really are a partially overlapping sort of scenario of what's gone on before us over many generations.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think one of the more important concepts here is to understand what overlapping actually means and how that relates to awareness and otherness. Because that actually our awareness and otherness, that what our experience is, and essentially how they're overlapping with others' experiences, and hence that the importance of dialogue within that framework. And I think that this really kind of gets to some of the fundamental concepts around comprehensivity. And when we start to kind of look at what the parts actually look like, and what it means to be conscious, what it means to be the observer. So, we have, once we have that idea, then our interactions become much more meaningful, and there's an openness that exists to maybe not look at the world through one dogmatic system, in the sense that which obviously geometrically has been a problem. Well, maybe not one, but still it's that Fuller is trying to, I find, to get us to think for ourselves, and to think in terms of whole systems. But yeah, so this is like kind of something where the geometry and the ethics and how we interact with each other kind of come together. So
I think the other thing that's here is is how he has described universe.
Yeah.
And a lot of us try and think of universe as having some kind of boundary structure. There's some edge, as if it's one of the universes. And it's really interesting to think of it in the context of Fuller saying there's only one universe, and it's always made up of me and everything that's not me. And to me, that also comes back to what we've talked about many times around what you know and what you don't know. Well, what you don't know is part of if you want, the rest of the universe. And so that definition to me sort of resonates, that is, all the time it's simply universe is me and everything that isn't me. And everything that isn't me includes everything that's known and everything that's unknown. And if there's a lot more to know, then the universe, in a sense, just becomes, if you want, bigger in one's mind, because there's a lot more of what's not me that I didn't realize there was. But if I can start with an idea that universe is everything that's me and not me, then that I can start every morning at universe and then travel in nanoseconds through all the different layers into what's important to me right now, this moment, this day. And I know when as I've used the example before, I know when I'm brushing my teeth that I have traveled through universe to get there, and something might come up that says something that I traveled through becomes relevant for whatever reason. It could be that I'm out of toothpaste and I now have to go to the store and buy some. Whereas 2 seconds before, the fact that I've got a car sitting in the garage waiting to go somewhere, it wasn't in my plan for that 10 minutes of that morning. So that's what I love about this universe, is everything me and what's not me.
Okay, I've something to say because it came up right in the book here, because they talk about universes, right? That's why there's no the word the, but then there is also, he says that, wait, now where is the part where he says they're universes? The possible existence of more than one, just as we do not say the God, but rather simply God, right? Okay, so I've got two things. One is this, does anybody know here where the whole idea of multiverse comes about? The one in like what we see in Marvel and all that, because a lot of the comics are really based on science, just like Star Wars and this Star Trek and so on. So that's number one. Number two is to continue reading. Richard, you should take it on, because you're big on scenario, and yes, let's listen to you and see it from your perspective after. So that's the next part of the reading. Okay, so but anybody know about multiverse, where it comes about?
I was thinking about multiverse, actually, as when Richard was talking. I mean, it's been a while that I've had a conversation about that. But even if there are multiple universes, there still would be one universe superseding that, right? So even if you have multiple universes, there would still be, like, it would be contained by something, even if they were expanding. They would be expanding within something. So it's kind of, I forget who the physicist that had come up with it though.
So it was through science that they started talking about multiverse.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, no, I actually have some sources on it that I can put in the chat. I'll put it there in a minute. Yeah, I had a discussion with some people about maybe 5-6 years ago, probably 5 years ago. And so it's, generally not not, from what I understand, not the most, well accepted theory, but it's one that's out there. But I'll put some things in the chat about it before we're done here.
Thank you.
Sure.
So which is the start paragraph now?
Another facet.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, right. Another facet of the scenario concept centers on the misconception of the environment as a static whole. For instance, looking out at a distant star, it is all too easy to think we are seeing it just as it is at the moment, while in reality, that particular star is so far away that its light takes 100 years to reach us. What we're actually looking at is a live show taking place 100 years ago. We are seeing an event that occurred before we were born. So universe is the integral or sum total of all experience. It cannot be unitarily conceived, but as thus defined, it is all inclusive. You cannot get out of universe. Fuller's definition avoids imparting a sense of thingness, part of his effort to encourage us to think in terms of pure principle. Universe is energy and thought all knotted together by incredibly complicated webs of relationships. It is ultimately impossible to separate the physical and the metaphysical. Both are experience. The scientific principles that govern the interaction of energy events as timeless statements of truth are themselves metaphysical. The line, therefore, becomes even more difficult to draw. This is why Fuller's definition depends upon consciousness. Our awareness of energy events defines their existence. We cannot go beyond the limits set by our understanding. Finally, Fuller assures us that the definition is complete. People say to me, I think you have left something out of your definition of universe. The statement becomes part of my experience, but never will anyone disprove my working hypothesis because it'll take experimental proof to satisfy me, and the experiment will always be part of the experience of my definition, ergo included. So that to me is another way of saying all of that other stuff is just everything that's not me.
Yep.
So he elaborates in a 1975 videotape lecture entitled Everything I Know. Someone might ask, what about dreams? I think you left that out. And I reply, no, for that is part of your experience. He seems to have all the angles covered. Generalized principles. The principle of leverage is a scientific generalization. It makes no difference of what material either the fulcrum or the lever consists, nor do the special case sizes of the lever and fulcrum, nor do the special case sizes of the lever and the fulcrum in any way alter either the principle or the mathematical regularity of the ratios of physical work advantage. Mind is the uniquely human faculty that surveys the ever larger inventory of special case experiences stored in the brain bank. From time to time discovers one of the rare scientifically generalized principles running consistently through all the relevant experience set. Fuller spoke frequently and ponderously on the generalized principles. Those statements, be they verbal or in shorthand of mathematical equations, that have been proven to always hold true. In other words, generalized principles are rules with no exceptions. From the simple, the mechanical advantage allowed by leverage to the highly profound E equals mc squared, equating matter with energy and quantifying the rate of exchange. These principles taken all together describe universe. Applying a generalized principle in a novel way is called invention. In the broadest sense, synergetics is the search for generalized principles. Design science is the application, as will be discussed in chapter 16.
Yeah, maybe actually we should stop there because that's quite a bit that we've been covering. Even coming back to, when we were talking finally about universe. And I thought it was a page before that, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I think that the key line that I kind of picked up on there as far as definition avoids imparting a sense of thingness. Part of his effort to encourage us to think about the pure principle. And that's kind of in the sense that where he kind of gets to the idea of the physical and the metaphysical, so that we're not necessarily just focused on our immediate experience. That in thinking about things in terms of patterns that encompass the holistic thinking. So a lot of times, people do have this tendency when applying different frameworks to really kind of separate some of the, I'll just say higher, metaphysicals may turn, well, no, I mean, yeah, it's not essentially some of the higher level concepts and what their particulars are. And so this is also very, this is essential when it comes to being precise with our language and predictability. So we're actually capturing a concept, and then we can get to what the essence of the concept actually is, and be able to evaluate our specific experience in a much more precise way.
But that, in my mind, keeps you on track of thingness.
Yes, you're right.
And so what I'm looking at too is he's saying that universe is energy, and thought all knotted together by incredibly complicated webs of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And so my way of understanding even that the minimum complexity, the tetrahedron, that it's made up of four things, if you want, four corners, and the interconnections. So the tetrahedron by itself is not a thing, but it has some things in it and interconnections, which I now read to be the energy and thought all knotted together. And the knotted together could be kind of like a corner or a thing. And
The
it's
connection
kind of
between
interesting that she used, maybe he did too, but used the language of incredibly complicated webs of relationships. I would strike out the word complicated and put in, I'd either just put in incredibly complex webs of relationships, or I would even put in incredibly comprehensive complex webs. So it's interesting why the language of complicated is thrown into this notion of minimum and expanded complexity.
Sure. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that the other line that actually had stuck out to me is that our awareness of energy events defines their existence. And we cannot go beyond the limits set by our understanding. For me, I think that that's also essentially is that how awareness, to me, the reason I like this explanation of it in a sense. Is it I think that this is a good definition of consciousness. You know, a lot of times that we talk about consciousness, and there's all different types of ways of approaching it. But I think it's consciousness is related to agency, and agency is related to awareness, and that's related to our communications and our ability to predict events, because that leads to how intentional we can be with our actions.
But do we have the ability to predict events?
Do we have, I mean, we can be more accurate than we had been previously, but do we have the ability? Absolutely not. No.
But the assumption is that if we try hard enough, we will be able to be 100% predictive, which is what the pre-20th century science led us to believe.
Right. So that you're getting back to that one principle idea that as opposed to an infinite number of possibilities. Sure. But in any case, you know, just when I think about this in terms of you know, decision making in general, and how this actually, what awareness actually means, how we direct our energy. Awareness of energy is actually a really important thing just in general. Sometimes we direct our energy in the wrong, you know, trying to avoid things, and or because of our fear, which is fine. Everybody's afraid of something, but it becomes paralyzing. And being aware of that and transferring that energy to something that's more productive is a very real process that is very practical, that obviously is very much focused on within the cognitive sciences. So essentially transferring your your avoidance, essentially the energy that you're spending avoiding something, and putting it towards something that's much more productive. So anyway,
well, one of the things that we ended up discussing this morning in this World Weavers group was the possibility that, in my mind anyway, that consciousness and awareness are the same thing.
It's one way of categorizing. I mean, you know, you can get into the panpsychic.
No, well, I guess I'm trying to look at it from, you know, a generalized principle, and so
that's how I define it. Yeah,
it was coming across as awareness is really being conscious of something, or even having. We even got into the idea of whether consciousness sort of exists by itself, and then you put you know, the self and other sort of attached to it, and then you get this self-awareness other, and awareness seemed to be surfacing as if it was consciousness.
it's a feedback loop, essentially. If you're gonna,
Sorry, can we be conscious and not be aware? I'm trying to think of situations like that.
no, because you have to be aware of otherness.
Because then otherwise there's no awareness, right?
Right.
Yeah, and that's why the idea of consciousness and awareness sort of, for me anyway, starting to feel like they're synonyms. They're, you know, it's one and the same thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, you know, that's the way I look at it. I also look at it and how it relates to other things, like specifically judgment.
You know, I'm trying to think, you know, whether there are times, moments where you're conscious of it, but you're not quite aware. And then suddenly you're aware, and then it's like something is sitting at the back there, but you're not quite able to kind of pull it out. Because I think I've had some moments like that where it's sitting at the back and I can't really put it into words, so I can't like pull it out as to exactly what I know about it, or you know, just sitting at the back,
Yeah.
and suddenly
Well,
Intuition?
to me, it sounds like trying to pull it out is like trying to surface the otherness that's going to um, make it kind of become um, make it sort of exist for us. In other words, as you were trying to pull it out, we were playing around with this. Now, when I think about it, around this idea of thoughts of suicide, and we ended up using the kind of the adjective of conscious thoughts. So trying to acknowledge the idea there might be something, maybe just the way Anna's describing it, there's something going on that you can't quite put your finger on, but it's sort of saying, in effect, it's saying, I'm not so sure I want to live in this world. And then some kind of otherness may in fact surface, so that you then have what we were calling a conscious thought. In other words, it actually becomes aware in one's mind or thinking. So I wish I could go back and find out more about why did we put in conscious thoughts of suicide instead of just thoughts of suicide.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Yeah, do let us know what you find.
Yeah, that actually would be interesting. Because yeah, so would anybody like to comment on the generalized principles as far as like, you know, just anything in particular that stuck out here?
Well, what sticks out for me is this the principle of the leverage and the fulcrum.
Right.
And when we get into the discussions around AI, it seems to me that AI is just another one of these leverages of a fulcrum. We've now figured out another way to develop a tool that extends the arm or the hand or the ability of the human. And so the AI is no different than the generalized principle of putting a board under a rock and using a leverage ratio in order to lift or move that rock. Does that make any sense? That AI is just another generalized principle of the fulcrum and the lever?
Yep, I'm comfortable with that.
I haven't heard it actually articulated like that. I mean, in some ways, we're all leveraging what information we have. So, you know, it works. But I had not thought of it in those terms. Probably would be interesting to see like exactly how I guess you know, how do you essentially feed a certain type of, I mean, I don't even know if it would be a certain type of information. I have to think about it in terms of, I've had some conversations about how the information is actually fed into these models recently. And if there's a way of effectively kind of getting the most bang for your buck, if you will. But I haven't thought that out. But anyway, I haven't thought of it from that perspective, Richard. So
I think we should be able to count it, because like say for instance, when we first got a computer, right? Or in this start off with a simple calculator, we could count faster, and I'm sure people can quantify how much faster it helps us count. And then, of course, when we had the internet, we could work a lot faster, from calculating to writing to not having to erase and just type over, or and or not having to do the drafts and write the drafts all over again. So I'm sure we can quantify the amount of time it saves us. And then the minute we got into the internet, communication, and then of course, as individuals, how much further we could communicate with people and how much faster. Yeah. So because you're talking about leverage, right? So I realized that just now when Richard said AI is leverage, right? And I straight away answered. And as you went down that path, Joe, I realized, okay, we can say yes, but then is it leverage? Because leverage means you can, for it to be a principle, means you have to be able to prove it and calculate it. Yes. So so that, yeah. So if that's the case, then we should be able to calculate. I'm sure someone has numbers on those things, right? And the AI, of course, now we don't even have to write it. It's writing for us, in in a couple of minutes. Yeah.
No, I think you can absolutely calculate the impact that it has. That's for sure. I mean, as far as as far as how it impacts the way people work, and just even in the way we even engage with aggregating and searching for information. So from that perspective, yes, it's kind of what I was thinking about is almost how do you get the type of information that serves almost like a trend tab. That's where I was thinking of it kind of in leverage terms. And so we're having a bigger kind of the most effective form of information that's actually being fed into the model. But again, that would also depends on, that would depend on a lot of different things actually. But anyway, so that's a thought around that when it comes to that. So anyway, so as far as generalized principles go, I think that the interesting part about it is the consistently generalized principles running consistently through all the relevant experiences set. And I think that that's a really important point in particular, because, what it was talked about earlier was this idea of completeness. And now he's talking about, and specifically in synergetics, and Amy's covering it, is that consistency. And when you're thinking of terms of systems, obviously those two things are actually essential. It's the kind of thinking holistically, and that you're coming up with something that is consistently true. That's how you come up with a generalized principle. And this, I like how it's stated, relevant experience set. Like, so it's that what is relevant to our experience. And then you can kind of derive from there the whole system, because it's, you know, through your relevant experience, then others' relevant experience, and you kind of start to be able to define what the system is. And understanding that there's an inherent contradiction in the system is what it allows you to focus on the connections between things. So generalized principles are important, especially in the sense that how we come up with them. Yeah, any other comments?
Generalize, because people do use the term universal principles, right? They're the same.
They yeah, universals, yeah, apply in all situations. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, there's generalized these fundamental principles that actually apply, and then there are particular instances. This is where actually Bucky really is very profound, in the sense that he talks about the micro and the macro. You know, kind of and that gets to, I would say, awareness as well. Absolutely. How generalized principles relates to awareness. And the ability to be able to see that is well, I mean, you're seeing the connections between things. So actually, I didn't realize it was 12:40 already. So I mean, we could keep, let me see how far we have to go here. I mean, do you want to finish this section? Is everybody good with that? Or do you want to go to takeaways?
I think we go into takeaways, yeah.
Okay.
Because that we have got such a rich discussion today.
Yeah, there was a lot there. So I'll put that down for next week. And then I don't know what page that's going to be for Steve, but yeah. Do you want to go to the takeaways, Anne? How do you feel, and what are you taking away from the day?
Okay. Actually, just that how rich the discussions are every week, and I'm just so thankful. Joe, Richard, Steve, every Sunday we're here, and it's like you share I share something, or I go down a path, and then Joe would add, and then Richard would explain, and then Steve would share, you know. So and we just go down that way, and then I realized the end of it, leaving just after 2 hours, I get so much out of our meets every Sunday and of course Wednesday, that there's so much more to add to what I know for the past 6 decades, you know. And then you realize that I need another 6 decades to be able to even do half a fraction of the things that we talked about in our discussions. Yeah. So I just say so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Richard, how do you feel, and what is your takeaway today?
Well, again, much of the same sentiment that you're just expressing, and to be able to go through, as you say, almost a paragraph or maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs, and to have the ripple kind of dialogue that spins off of that, which is, I guess, another way of trying to understand the generalized principle of leverage, because it's what I can leverage on my own out of reading a chapter or section of a book is very different than what happens when I can, in a sense, add the fulcrums of whoever is on the call, whether it's 3, 4, 5, and it gives your lever much more latitude in terms of being able to lift or pull or understand or apprehend something. And so it really, in that sense, becomes a kind of multiple hands on the lever that gives you the greater extension or greater expansion of the generalized principle of leverage. You know, and it must be common in your educational experiences as the young people move through the different levels and out into the world, that they can now kind of function more capably, because they're taking real world kind of learning and experiences. And that to me is another way of using the educational system as a better or different kind of leverage of moving, you know, the children from the lower grades to the higher grades and out into the world. And it's almost like you've got a little lever, you know, that you use to give the grade 1 level 1 student a little bit of an extra boost, and then to 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, and eventually you leverage them right out of the educational system into the real world. And all along, the generalized principle of leverage has been operating for the educators. And what you're experiencing, it seems, is it's taking on the traditional educational system and basically saying your leveraging, you know, works, it has value, but if you leverage this way, this other lever, you're going to get a lot more out of your students. And in getting a lot more out of the students, you're going to get a lot more out of the teaching for you. So you're going to become enriched in almost a direct sort of ratio to the enrichments that the kids feel. And then it starts to feed on itself. So the more energized and enriched the teachers are feeling, the more the kids become engaged with whatever it is they're learning. And the more they get engaged, the more energized the teachers get, in terms of, I want to be back there tomorrow morning to experience another new exchange with the students. And so it's that kind of double leveraging or dual leveraging. Yeah, that's really exciting when you think about it from that just basic generalized principle point of view. Yeah, so thank you. This is as I say, I get much more out of these kinds of discussions in the dialogue than just straight reading. And I wish, when I was trying to, I summarized Amy's book years ago and gave it out to students as required reading. Well, not required, but encouraged reading. But I would love to go back to those days and have the students engaged in this kind of dialogue. And I think it would accelerate or leverage their interest in this work a lot more than probably did when I was just giving them a handout. Yeah, so thank you. This is really
Richard, just before we end this, just to let you know, you're just so spot on. Thank you. Maybe next week I'll explain to you all how we 5 times the thing at 60% of the time it takes to be educated.
yeah. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. Joe, how are you? And what are you taking away from this evening?
You know, I'm well, and I too share what everybody's sentiment here is that, and you know, very much, and I have a very much a deep appreciation for your excitement to help children, in particular, you know, and give them the experience that, frankly, that I did not have, to be quite honest. And that most people don't have, that we have to come to discover. And I say that only because I really think that it's really what learning is all about, is kind of thinking about things in terms of wholeness, as opposed to thinking in a very narrow, siloed way. Along with the, you know, the experiments that kids conduct. Because I think that ultimately that leads to a better dialogue and better interactions. It's exciting. I'm very excited actually every time that you come here and talk about that in particular. So very much appreciate that. You know, I'm very appreciative of you know, the way this has been laid out and the conversations themselves, how the conversations themselves between Saturday nights and Wednesdays, you know, kind of relate to one another so clearly. It's a lot of fun for me personally, and it's something that I'm deeply grateful for. I enjoy our conversations and I miss them when they're not here.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many connections that we can actually start to make. I was actually in it was a place last week, and somebody was actually speaking, and we're talking about something about getting to the idea of generalized principles and how they apply to our life. At least that's what my question was. And what was brought in was this idea of what concepts were important to keep from the past and what concepts were important to disregard. And the importance of principles within that, right? So you have to have an understanding of principles and the fundamental building foundations of the system that you're talking about, like essentially, in order to know what to change. The idea of what is of time itself, what was true in one period, and then there's this other idea, what is timeless, you know, so what is always true. And I think that that's where we start to spot the patterns of generalized principles. And once you see those, that you can really start to have an idea of not only how to measure change, but also what change, the implications of when you do make a change and how that may impact relationships. So to put this in real terms, you know, what are the real principles of education? You know, what are we really trying to accomplish?
Yep.
And one of the things that was never asked to me, but until I, you know, read a, you know, book on Stoicism, is what does it really mean to live a good life? And that's a really important question to be able to answer. And so you start to develop these principles that define our relationships. What is really meaningful. So, and so when we think in terms of the whole, and we're not necessarily just thinking in terms of the part, in other words, just answering questions and getting a good grade for no reason, we're actually trying to get a good grade in order to actually interact with others in a more meaningful way. And it's not even about the grade at that point, really. It's about, just learning. That's where I think having an understanding of what the system, what you're actually trying to accomplish, allows you to change the educational system. That comes back to the idea of change. So, and how the educational system currently, I would say, is broken up into parts. And it's very fragmented. And this is actually the point of one of the points of CJ's book. The other is collaboration, but the comprehensivity is part of that. Obviously, it's collaborating for comprehensivity. So that, that is incorporating the experiences of others in addition to that, and actually suspending our judgments. So I also very much appreciated the, building the relationships between the physical and the metaphysical.
Yeah.
Not separating those two. Because they often do get separated. And just in general, as far as how Amy actually captures a lot of the ideas of Fuller in the sense of saying something like energy events, I have a deeper appreciation for the words that Fuller uses because the way they're being framed here. And so from that perspective, having that kind of, understanding makes Bucky a whole lot more, I think, accessible. So yeah, I mean, so I'm deeply appreciative of the time that we have together, because otherwise, these concepts are, they're not necessarily always readily discussed. And so the times that we can discuss them, it's a lot of fun. So with that, I was going to try and keep talking for 4 more minutes just to be perfect with the time, but you know what, that would be really,
It's called a filibuster.
yeah, it would be more than a filibuster. It would be kind of, being a little bit of a perfectionist, and that is not, perfection is always something in the future, even though that there would be a perfect time to end this. So, in any case, so I appreciate everybody, and I'll see everybody on Wednesday, at the very least. So,
Yeah.
fate permitting. Okay, everyone, take care.
Take care.
Have a good rest of the weekend.
Yep. Thank you. I'm busy taking down stuff as you were talking. Bye.
Thank you. Take care.